Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Every Last One, where we discuss post-punk, new wave, and electronic music by way of my vinyl record collection. A recent report found that in a single day of 2024, more music was released than the entirety of 1989. With so much music and such a deluge coming out of new releases on a daily, let alone weekly basis, it can be pretty challenging to figure out what to listen to and how to discover new music. Well, that's why you have me, of course, your trusty YouTube channel. I've seen all of your Spotify raps going around online, and I'm thinking it's time for me to jump on and show you guys what I enjoyed in 2024. So we're going to go through 25 albums today. Got a lot ahead of us, gonna jump right in. We're gonna have a narrow focus around the genres that we cover on this channel, so expect new wave, post-punk, electronic sounds, some alternative and indie artists. After all, you guys wouldn't want to have an aging hipster talking to you about Charlie XCX and Billie Eilish now, would you? No. Okay, so we're gonna get started. Oh, by the way, before we do, that's Kareen with 2023's Tear, or Tear, however it's pronounced. It's my favorite record of 2023. Some great sounds out there. If you like The Cure or New Order, highly recommend checking out that album. From beginning to end, it's just stacked with bangers. We're gonna get started with some honorable mentions, and of these honorable mentions, I'm remiss to let you know that I don't have two of them. One is trapped in the mail and the other one I can't order. It seems that we found ourselves in a postal strike here in Canada, and it's been that way for over 3.5 weeks at this point. So since the local record stores haven't picked up a couple of these records, and one of them I actually ordered and waiting on, we're just gonna have to deal with records showing up on my side here. So getting things started with the first honorable mention, which goes to Zuli and the album Lambda. This album features some of the most experimental and feverish production styles I've heard back as far as the Downward Spiral. Everything from just really liberal use of analog distortion that just saturates in your earbuds. This record is a fever dream. Highlights from this record include 10,000 Paper Cuts, my favorite, The Horn, listen to it, and Syzygy, which features some intertwined AM and FM radio frequencies just bursting in and out, and skips and undulates and turns around in such ways. It just reminds me of something like from Skinny Puppy's The Too Dark Park era. Give it a listen. Next honorable mention, one of my top 5 favorite acts of all time is Underworld and their album Strawberry Hotel. This is Carl Hyde and Rick Smith's first full-length album since 2016's Barbara Barbara, We Face a Shining Future. I like this record a lot. I think it's a little front-loaded, but I really enjoyed the fact that the tracks really just flow well into each other. It definitely has a lot of techno bangers off the front end for kind of quietly sputtering out with an amazing track called Gene Pool. And then after that, I wish the record would have stopped. There's 3 more just instrumental tracks with some added vocals that I would say could have been relegated to B-sides or just left on the cutting room floor. Highlights from Strawberry Hotel for me are going to be Techno Shinkansen, the bonkers Lewis and Pomona, and the beautiful driving force of Hilo Sky. Check out that guitar riff in the middle when it breaks down. Just beautiful. All right, next up, I actually have this one, Square Pusher and his album Dostro Time. So this album by Tom Square Pusher Jenkinson features his usual blend of instrumental, free jazz bass playing tracks interspersed with his usual spastic drum and bass and IDM bangers. This one's a gatefold. Highlights for this one for me would be the track Wendorland and Dunere and the chill out jam Heliobat. Check it out. All right, next honorable mention goes to A Place to Bury Strangers and the album Synthesizer. This is the NYC post-punk and shoegaze band's 7th album. And what's really cool about this one, gotta show you this, the album cover features an actual functional circuit board that can be converted into a working synthesizer. How's that for a gimmick? The record itself is glow in the dark. Highlights for me on this one, out of the gates, the opening track, Disgust, and the tracks Join the Crowd, and then my absolute favorite would be Comfort Never Comes. Still moving ahead with the honorable mentions, we got Cold Cave and the album Passion Depression. This one is on Black and Ice glitter vinyl. I'm gonna show you what that is in just a second. This is Cold Cave's first album in several years after a run of singles. Got this leaflet in there, a lyric sheet. And that's what Black Ice glitter is. I don't know if this is some kind of a trend going around now with these glitter sparkle discs that are bedazzled as such. There's gonna be another one coming up on this list very soon. This album features Cold Cave's usual brand of goth-tinged synth pop. Anyone who's into The Cure, New Order should definitely take a listen. In fact, on this record, there are several tracks that sound like New Order's track Temptation. I swear, I feel like Cold Cave has ripped off Temptation probably about 4 times over the years. Highlights for me on this one would include Hourglass, which is definitely Temptation, Everlasting, which is also New Order's Temptation, and Holy Road, which sounds from the vocal melody and the grunt of the guitar very much like the track Warsaw by Joy Division. All right, next honorable mention, Jamie XX and the album In Waves. This is James Thomas Smith, aka also the producer from the XX's long-awaited follow-up after 9 years since the breakthrough album In Color. I do like this theme that he's got with the cutouts in the records. And this one, white vinyl. So I did enjoy this record, although I'd say the use of a lot of disco and groove and funk-based samples over techno sounds made me enjoy it a little less than the debut, which I love and I still listen to this day. Highlights for me on In Waves would include I Waited All Night, Still Summer, great techno banger, and the closing track, Falling Together. All right, next up, we got the Pet Shop Boys with their 2024 album, Nonetheless. This is their first album since 2020's Hotspot. At first, this album didn't really reach me. Felt that it was a little too on the disco end of Pet Shop Boys. I tend to prefer the more synth pop and orchestrated tracks, but upon listening to it more, it really grew on me. Really like the track Feel, which apparently they gave to Brandon Flowers and he never ended up opting to take it and sing on it. I really like the track Dancing Star, even though it's basically domino dancing rewritten. And third track, Why Am I Dancing, which sounds like a total textbook Pet Shop Boys album track title. This one, gray vinyl. Next up, we've got The Black Dog with Other Like Me. Long-running Sheffield, UK electronic listening band, The Black Dog, love to inject the sound of industry and the brutalism of the architecture of the neighborhoods that they reside in into their music and intersect it with some beautiful ambient and pads and melodic like timbres and structures. This record deals with imposter syndrome and mental health. You would think that with such subjects you would have a record with vocals, but not with The Black Dog. I ordered this one from their website and it is on double gray vinyl. This one's a trip from beginning to end. It just, all the tracks flow and I have a hard time picking out favorites. There are 3 tracks dead in the center, 4 real, Closed Eyes, and then the title track, Other Like Me, that just listen to those 3 in a row from The Black Dog. If you like any kind of IDM, electronic music, highly recommended from 2024. Next up is Seafeel with Everything Squared. Long-running shoegaze, electronic, Warp Records alumni Seafeel finally return after 13 years away with, I would say, a mini album, very short record. Phenomenal to listen to if you want some like easy background music while you're chilling out or working. Some really groovy and spooky sounds there. Lots of vocals treated interestingly and flutes and other reverberated timbres in the distance. Really flows together, this record, and reminds me of both the future sound of London and in some of the more melodic, nostalgic passages like Boards of Canada. Highlights for me on this would be Multifords and Anti-Skeptic, which just has some beautiful boards like Tripped Out Sounds in the distance, and then Hooked Paw. Check it out. Next up is Kelly Lee Owens and the album Dream State. This is her third record. She's gone more accessible and at times poppy on this one, coming off of the exposure she got touring on the Memento Mori tour with Depeche Mode. She collaborates with Tom Rowlands from the Chemical Brothers and one of her long-running collaborators, Daniel Avery. This is on the black vinyl. I know there's a white as well as a split white and black version. I was just so happy to find this at a local record store, given that this record came out about 3 months ago. If you want something really similar to, I would still say Daniel Avery is just like a big influence on her sound, even on the poppier tracks. And there's some great throwbacks to like 90s and then electronic listening music. Highlights just off the top for me, Dark Angel, very anthemic, even has some almost like Sigur Rós kind of like overtures to it in the intro. And then you've got Love You Got, and then I'm also gonna say the title track, Dream State, is absolute favorite on this record. Check this one out. Next up is Trent Mahler with the album Dreamweaver. Anders Trent Mahler has returned with another record as he continues to move away from just strictly instrumental electronic music into more of a blend of like goth and shoegaze with breathy female vocals, a lot of dream pop sounds on this one. Highlights for me on this one would include Dreamweavers, the goth meets blues Nightfall, and the slow dive evoking Hollow. If you like slow dive, check out Hollow. Next up, we've got the Baltimore band Future Islands and their album People That Aren't There Anymore. I'm a big fan of Future Islands, really enjoyed their first couple records, and I would say that this one's a return to form. Really enjoying all of the tracks, it's just smooth throughout. For me, the highlights here, I'm gonna go with The Tower, and I'm also gonna say Peach, and absolute favorite is Iris. This one's on clear vinyl. I think there's like a Yolk yellow and red one that matches the cover, which was like a web store exclusive. Very anthemic. If you're a fan of The Cure, if you're a fan of New Order, you owe it to yourself to check out this record, People That Aren't There Anymore, and just Future Islands in general. Very adjacent to those bands. All right, moving along, we've got number 13 here, and that is Ski Mask and the album Resort. This is Munich producer Brian Mueller's most recent album. Had to go all the way to Munich, Germany to pick this one up. Very happy to find it. This album features more of Brian's beat-oriented, garage, dub, techno-inspired pieces, interspersed with some of the more ambient and cinematic tracks. I think it's on double boring black vinyl, but some cool labels there nonetheless. Highlights for me here include the opener, Hedwig Transformation Group, some amazing pads reminiscent of late 90s, early 2000s era Underworld. Element, which is very reminiscent of old Warp records like early Autechre, and my favorite overall, which is Terminal Z, which is very Boards of Canada, like Tomorrow's Harvest. Moving along now with John Hopkins and the album Ritual. This is John Hopkins' latest album, which is more functioning like a single track that evolves over 41 minutes. It's basically like a cumulative mood piece. Recently, John Hopkins has gotten really into more kind of trippy music for healing purposes, kind of on the back of his Music for Psychedelic Therapy album from a few years ago. And this album's no different. This one's a gatefold, little lens flare there in the middle. This one's clear, but the last side is actually just a image. I don't know if I can see it in this light. An image of the cover. So one side is etched, one side can play on the second disc. Highlights for me here would be Palace Illusion, which evokes Ulrich Schnauz and those types of instrumental electronic sounds. The Solar Goddess Return, which is super intense. And then my absolute favorite is the piano-oriented Nothing Is Lost as the closing track. But listen to this one all the way through. It's a trip. All right, are you still watching? Still out there? Still moving along. Kiasmos and the album 2. This is Olafur Arnalds and Janus Rasmussen. Olafur is from Iceland and Janus is from the Faroe Islands, and they rekindled their friendship, making this record the second and the follow-up to their 2014 album 10 years prior. Love the minimal techno dub electronic sounds intermixed with orchestral and very lavish cinematic arrangements here. This one should also be on clear, double clear. This album is a masterclass in producing electronic music and mixing it with acoustic instruments, specifically strings and orchestral sounds. Highlights for me here are the track Sailed, opener Groan, which is very Icelandic, and absolutely the track Bound, which just builds and builds in the first 3 minutes with these synth tones, and then just gives way to one of the best drops you can ever hear in electronic music. And I'm not talking about dance floor drops, I'm talking about just tension and release done well. The subtle, smooth vibes, and then all of a sudden the beat comes back in with the best bass line, giving way to these string flourishes that bring it to a close. Highly recommended. Next up is Floating Points and the album Cascade. This is Sam Shepard's latest album, covers a lot of different moods, from the techno bangers of Key 103 and Birth 4000, all the way to the more mellow ending Ablaze track. This one is beautiful vinyl here. It's a gatefold, shiny, shiny, shiny. Artwork on this card, again, just beautiful, beautiful package. This one is also sparkle glitter vinyl. All right, next up is Fortet and the album 3. Kieran Hebden, aka Fortet, returns with some more of his down-tempo, mellow, organic, mixed with electronic soundscapes, groovy kind of moving rhythms on these ones here. This one's on boring black vinyl. This is my favorite Fortet album since his 2010, There Is Love in You. It really reminds me of that one. Also the cover on it's very similar to There Is Love in You. Highlights for me on this one would be the opening track Loved, Daydream Repeat, and the closer 3 drums. If you're missing your Boards of Canada fix, listen to that one. The way it builds, 8-minute trip, goosebumps. Next up is Space Echo and the album How Did We Get Here? Space Echo, aka Dean Garcia, formerly of the band Curve, one of shoegaze genre's unsung heroes, partially because of the fact that most of their catalog hasn't been available on streaming, but also that they just never got the same dues as My Bloody Valentine and Ride and Slow Dive. Gotta say, this album here is just a masterclass in shoegaze production. Love the sounds here. This is Dean, who was the music man behind Curve, working with his daughter, Berlin Garcia, on vocals. And some amazing, just dream pop and just lazy, just washed out shoegaze tracks. I had to order this one through Bandcamp from their website. Don't know if you can still get any copies or if there's any pressings left. It was a very limited run, I think like 200 copies. Highlights to check out would be the wistful track Look Down, which is on streaming, as well on Bandcamp. Look up How Did We Get Here, the opener, and then the wistful closing track All I See. These new shoegaze kids have nothing on Space Echo and Dean Garcia. Next up is John Cale in the album Poptical Illusion. John Cale, formerly of the Velvet Underground, has worked with Brian Eno over the years, most notably on the Wrong Way Up seminal album from the early 90s. Check it out. This concept album features lots of industrial sounds interspersed with like breakbeat rhythms and skittering guitars. You wouldn't think that this man was 82 years young listening to the snarl of the guitar on the industrial track Shark Shark. How We See the Light is vintage, again, hearkening back to Wrong Way Up. If you're an Eno fan and love his ballad work, that track, How We See the Light, is one of my favorite songs of 2024. And then Final track to listen to, There Will Be No River, John Cale. Next up is Trust and Performance. This is the new Trust record after quite a few years just releasing singles again, featuring his usual blend of dark wave and synth pop sounds. On this one, I'm gonna go with the very nostalgic, blissed out opening track, Soon. Very almost Speak and Spell, Depeche Mode-esque all at once. And this mood piece in the middle, which was beautiful when they performed it live last month, the track Clowned. This one is Boring Black Vinyl. There is a Canary Yellow edition as well, but pick this one up first. Can't be fussed to go after that, but Trust and Performance. Great synth pop. Next up is Contravoid and the album Detachment. If you're into industrial and EBM music, you're gonna find a lot to love here. Detachment, the closing track, features one of the most clever production tricks I've ever heard, using the very just mantra-like synth riff that plays through the first 2 minutes. When it drops out and the drums carry forth, the riff returns, only this time orchestrated by a bunch of string instruments that carry it to the close. This one, ordered from Contravoid's Bandcamp, and it's on a green vinyl disc. As well as Detachment, I'm gonna go with the super fun Death Shot and the 80s-esque Losing Game, which sounds like a cross between EBM and something like a Madonna or Tiffany track with the female vocals. You'll know when you hear it. Getting into the final few records, we've got Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and the album Wild God. After the heights of Skeleton Tree and Ghost Teen, which were records reflecting on loss and moving on from it, this record features a lot of really joyous and celebratory sounds and then lyrical themes as well. Very anthemic one. Comes with this album print. Really dig the texture on this one. I would say this album is fairly front-loaded though. Highlights for me here would be the first track, Song of the Lake, Frogs, and then Joy. We've got next The Smile and Wall of Eyes. This is one of 2 records released by The Smile, aka Tom York and Johnny Greenwood, along with drummer Tom Skinner. This one's a gatefold. Nice embossed cover here. And really, of the 3 records that The Smile have released, I enjoy this one the most. Blue vinyl disc. In 2022, during the season finale of the show Peaky Blinders, there was this one emotive track that came on during one of the scenes that no one can place, but featured some deeply emotive and angelic Tom York vocals. And just all over Reddit and the internets, people were speculating if this is going to eventually turn into a Radiohead or a Smile track. 2 years later, we got a response, and it's on this record. It's the track Teleharmonic. It's a classic, the best on this record, my favorite track from The Smile. Really harkens back to In Rainbow's era Radiohead, if you're into that. I also enjoy the track Bending Hectic, 8-minute trip of a journey, and while playing, you can really hear the actual detuning of the strings. It's bending, really clever. And the last track, You Know Me, which reminds me of Talk Talk's Laughing Stock. If you don't know Laughing Stock, check it out, and definitely listen to You Know Me from The Smile. Next up is my number 2 pick for top albums of the year, and it's gonna go to Songs of a Lost World by The Cure. This is the heat-sensitive cover from Blood Brothers. Cool gimmick. This one's on glow-in-the-dark picture disc. It's got the album cover. Gave it a spin. Sounds great for a picture disc, mind you. This album is a triumphant return to form for The Cure. The tone is bleak, unhurried, and consistent, with lyrics about coming to terms with loss and aging, Robert Smith couldn't really find what to sing about for the greater part of 20 years. He always said that the lyrics was always the hardest part that he struggled with, but after a record-breaking tour, his success for the music community with what he did against Ticketmaster, and then this album, this pretty much cements The Cure's place back at the top as rock icons. Heat sensitive. Favorites for me on this record, hard to pick, but I'm gonna go with Alone, All I Ever Am, and the closing track, End Song. So we're down to my favorite record of the year, James and the album Yummy. This is a Leo Abrams produced 18th album from the Manchester band James. For those of you out there that stopped listening to James after their 90s output, I recommend getting back into them. This is not just a heritage act putting out another record. This is a band at the top of their game, releasing some of the best songs they've written in years. This one's a gatefold, and it's the Blood Brothers edition, which is a Zoetrope picture disc. You won't see it here, but when it spins and you fire a camera at it, all of the daisies and the butterflies move and animate. Optical illusion, but cool. I've seen a lot of people's Wrapped lists and seen The Cure, see New Order come up. If you haven't been listening to James in 2024, this is gonna be your next favorite record. Lots of adjacent sounds on here. In terms of my favorites, it's so hard to pick, but I'm gonna go with the track Better With You, which has some amazing backing vocals from vocalist Chloe Alper, along with Tim Booth, taking it to the conclusion, and then this synthesizer just brightens up and then just pushes the track into the stratosphere. The super anthemic Way Over Your Head, and then the closing track, Folks. If you're a fan of Nick Cave, there's some amazing Nick Cave-esque tracks with beautiful storytelling like Shadow of a Giant and Butterfly. Leaving one of their concerts in 2024, I walked out past a man on the street who was singing celebratory to himself in a Manc accent, in a hole, way over your head, in need of a friend to come around and raise up the dead. And those were the lyrics from Way Over Your Head, not from one of their 90s tracks. People are loving these songs. This is a band that is firing on all cylinders. This is a band that's not resting on their laurels and on past fame. They're not a heritage act. They're still hungry, still looking for what's next, always writing, always whittling down from probably over 100 tracks to end up with even a bonus disc of additional 12 tracks, which are also amazing, which were just the ones left on the cutting room floor that were released as a bonus alongside Yummy. That should tell you what this is. When you get down to that many tracks and whittle to the best and fewest and streamline, you get to what's basically like a greatest hits collection. Do I love this album so much because I'm a big James fan, or am I a big James fan because this album is tremendous? Certainly the latter, and I recommend you check it out too, as well as some of my other picks from this list. I am going to link Spotify and Apple Music playlists in the description for this, so go listen to those, and if you like what you hear there, definitely track down the rest of these albums. I'm sure there's going to be something that I've picked that you had not heard this year. And on that note, what did you guys enjoy in 2024? I don't have that much time to listen to every single record out there. Let me know down in the comments, what's your top 5 or top 10, or if you want to go crazy, you can leave me a top 20 as well as a 5 honorable mentions. Let me know what you enjoyed this year. Songs, albums, how do you guys discover new music? Would you like to see a video on how to discover new music coming up in the near future? Thanks for sticking around for this video. Hope you enjoyed my list, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Be well and have a happy new year. Bye-bye.